put on his Google Glass, nod your head, and
Record everything. Okay.
yeah, just say, I think we're gonna have to take next slide.
Okay, that's fine.
Budget. Sorry.
That's-
Thanks for all the new members who signed up tonight. We'll use the money.
Josh, there's a clicker in my bag right next to you. Very top pocket. This one's your bag? Yep.
Okay, well, while you do that, I'll introduce myself. Again, I'm Sue Anderson. I'm the manager at Deluxe for the user experience team. And I have a slide that briefly says I'm a mom of 4 boys. That's enough for that. I originally started out in computer science. I worked at PTC for 11 years, including when I was an intern, and now I work at Deluxe. What I did at PTC was basically make really complicated systems, because they build like airplanes and stuff with their systems, and try to make it as simple as possible, whereas now I persuade people to buy things. 2 very different extremes, but they're both very valuable experiences to have. That's my email address in case you have any questions. But to go back a slide, today I'm going to talk about, I was sitting around thinking about what would be valuable to talk to a group of SEO gurus about, and we kind of thought it would be what can we do, what can I present that can sort of be an integrity check? So if you're sitting in a project and, do the right, okay. If you're sitting in a project and some of these things haven't been answered, I'd encourage you to raise your hand and ask the questions, because the context of the project that you're working on is extremely important. That comes first. And I would guess, typically this would be the job of the user experience team or research team or whoever it is that's doing that. The fact that we've thought about content before we've even really started making any design decisions, and then a couple of just basic design principles for mobile. Do I have control? Okay, so what is it that we do in user experience? Everybody has their own definition. Wikipedia it, Nielsen, everybody has a different definition. I guess I would say that, first of all, we give the user a seat at the table. Business is involved, technology is involved, you guys are involved, everybody's involved. And we are first and foremost, our priority is our user. And so what we do is we sit there and we listen to what business has to say, what technology, the IT folks have to say, what SEO folks have to say. We kind of balance it all. It's a balancing act, and we try to figure, okay, given all that, where's a win-win-win-win-win solution that will also make the experience an awesome experience. So what we're going to talk about today, I'm not going to go into responsive versus adaptive versus should we do a separate mobile site. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to talk about, actually I don't think you'll see SEO in any of my slides, sorry. But our guru at Deluxe here, he always says that if you have the awesome user experience, then you're going to cover SEO too. So I'm just going to kind of slide under that. Okay, is that okay? Okay, good. So we're going to start with just a couple of exercises to get your thoughts going. Let's, just kind of throw out answers there. We're going to use Target, super easy, it writes a local company. Let's start thinking about, if you were to access Target.com at your home, what are the types of things you might be looking for? Services, products, shoes. Hours, okay. And how about if you were on the road somewhere? What are the types of things you might be looking for if you visited Target.com? Locations, address, hours, shoes, huh? You might be looking for, does it have a mini clinic, right? Does it have a pharmacy? What are the hours? There are plenty of things. Where's the closest one? How about if you were actually in the store? What might you think about? Coupons, price comparison, bridal registries, that's a good one. Prices at other stores, items in stock, which aisle something is located. So, this just brings back bring home the point that according to where you are, the context in which you are, you know, the type of experience or the type of information that you're looking for varies quite a bit. And that applies to, you know, we're a group of, well, you're a group of SEO folks, you know, we're all sort of technically savvy folks, but, you know, according to also your persona and the type of person that you are, this could also vary quite a bit. For example, there might be a restaurant searching app out there and, you know, you're standing out in the street. If you were a Nick, who's my younger 20 to 30-year-old, right? He's looking for the greatest happy hour close by. I might be looking, okay, where can I get free food for my kids, right? So again, according to your persona, it can differ. Where you are, it differs. So it's really important to think ahead of time what exactly your context is for this thing that you're designing for. Starting with the persona, who is it that you're designing for? You know, how technically savvy are they? You know, what are their expectations? What are their basic browsing habits? What types of sites do they like using? Do they purchase things online? Do they purchase things on their phones? There are a lot of questions, or, you know, do they have access to these different devices that we're proposing designs for? And the second thing you want to understand is, like we were just talking about, where are they going to be accessing this site or application, whatever it is that you're working on. What type of device are they going to be using? Are they going to be on their couch using an iPad? Are they going to be at work on their computer? Are they going to be on the street, you know, using their phone? And then you think about the native capabilities of those devices. You know, can you access their GPS information? Can they quickly just click to call? Can they, does it know where they are? Same with GPS, I guess. And then what are their goals? What exactly are they trying to accomplish? If they're, you know, to really understand for this persona at this place, why would they be accessing our site? What is it that they're trying to accomplish? What type of information is it that they're trying to understand or learn? Which kind of leads into the content piece of it. So once we understand what their goals are, you then start thinking, okay, what is it that they want to learn? What is it that we need to convey to them? And then there's the flip side of it, the business side, where, well, what is it that we want to convey to them? Businesses always want to make money. You know, they might say, okay, we need to make sure they understand what our latest promotion is. Or we need to understand, we need to also sell toothpaste. If we're looking at toothbrushes, we need to make sure they understand that we have toothpaste, right? We want them to really understand. It's important to us that they understand that we've been in business for 30 years. Well, the users might just want to say, okay, I want a blue toothbrush. Do you have it in blue? Or, you know, what exactly are your hours? Or, you know, where's the closest location? So the best way to do this is take a list of all these content needs, this information that people need to understand, and do an exercise to prioritize it. It's one of those things where you sit in a room and you have to kind of give and take. Because again, you have to meet all needs, not just one side, right? And the beauty about the prioritization efforts is that you start to build a hierarchy of the content that you need to put on your site. And that kind of looks like something like this, maybe, where if you have a hierarchy, a simple hierarchy of, okay, this is the first most important information that we need to convey to our customers. Well, if you're on a site, you know, because we know that people view from left to right, up and down, right? That number one slot is where you need to have that most important content. If you're on a phone, then it's that the top little slot there, because that's what they're going to see as soon as your phone comes up. But you can start, before you even really start designing, you can build a hierarchy of kind of the layouts in which your sites are going to be built. Now, ideally, you would, you know, you've probably heard of mobile first, right? Because the idea is that you start with your mobile design, because when you do mobile, you edit and you edit and you do the minimal amount of information that you need, which is a lot harder than later adding a whole bunch to kind of add fluff and pretty, you know, all that stuff. So, but if you don't, which is a lot of the case, you usually start with a website and people are like, well, you have to make it mobile. Well, when you start thinking about going mobile and you have a hierarchy, you can say, okay, well, this needs to go into slot 3, but the really important information out of slot 3 is only this much. So there's a level of hierarchy of kind of the overall ideas, and then within the content itself, you start thinking about, okay, well, what's really important? So I guess the conclusion about this section is I can't emphasize enough how it's so important to really think about content before anybody even starts designing and creating this modern, hip, new experience, right? We really need to, people are on their phones because they want to get content. People need to learn or they need to find something that they're looking for. Okay, so because this is Mobile 101, I think that was the title of this talk. I have to talk about a few sort of design principles. So the behaviors on mobile devices, we all know, people are extremely impatient. You're usually very distracted. You're talking to people. You might be driving, not a good thing to do. You're, I don't know, in a meeting, again, not a good thing to do. And you're most likely, I don't know, most likely is appropriate, but you're on 4G, 3G, whatever it is that you're on, and you're really impatient, you're loading these pages, and you don't want to be loading a whole bunch of pages, right? Because you're just limited to the data that you have. And you might get charged more, who knows? So, principle number one is, kind of goes back to what we've been talking about, is always keep it simple. Keep it simple in terms of content, keep it simple in terms of your design, keep it simple, you don't want to be adding a whole bunch of visuals. Again, load time takes a lot. People, because they're distracted, they're looking for specific things, and if you have a whole bunch of clutter, they're not going to be able to find it, and then we're not going to be meeting their needs. The second one, and there are a whole bunch of principles, but I picked three, is you want to reduce digging. When you're on your phone, you're usually the good sites give you really what it is that you're looking for, and right away you can get to the content that you're trying to obtain. So what you need to do is actually have very strong, what we call scent, so that you're descriptive, you know exactly where you're going when you're pressing on something, so that you don't have to be doing a whole bunch of back and forth. Back and forth doesn't work so well on the mobile device. Maybe it's okay on the desktop, but so to be descriptive and to have clear paths and get people to the content that they're interested in within the context as soon as possible. And the last one is to take advantage of the native capabilities. If you don't want to ask people to put in their location, if you can take advantage of knowing where they are. You don't want to ask people to have to switch to their phone and try to dial in a number that they just remembered from some site that they just saw. You want people to actually be able to just simply click to call you. And I just read an article about how conversion rates are 50% higher if you actually have something like that on your phone, where people can directly just get to a phone call. So that's it. And this is that so typical user experience quote, but it kind of comes back to it. It's whenever you're working on a project, you have to really understand who it is, what they're trying to do, where they are, and if somebody hasn't shown that to you or expressed that to you, I would really highly encourage that you ask the question, because it's so important, and it's the key to having a successful project. That's it.
All right. I'm like old man winter, huh? Wow, look at that nice string there. All right, greetings, I'm Aaron. Let's get into the fun. So at Advanced SMX out in Seattle, this was the most striking thing out of all the nerd data and everything I pulled in the one-on-one sit-down with Matt Cutts. Not even asked or pushed on this, he just made the comment that you really need to think about mobile. Mobile is much faster than they anticipated. Now Google, who owns every last piece of data in the world, if they couldn't forecast it and see it coming, that just tells you how big the explosion is for mobile. I do want to give props. I know one other person that was able to tell the future. This is Sauer. When he was 13, he already had a Matt Cutts poster. He had an Avinash poster, and he also knew Hansen was going to be big. See what happens when you tweet about me? So anyway, here's a lot of things that I see happen with mobile. So you end up with a very good intention, just like Breaking Bad, right? He has cancer, so he wants to make money for his family. So he's going to cook some meth. So you have good intentions to be mobile, but what happens is a bad outcome sometimes, because you end up with just the utility of it just mobile. So while, like our first speaker, I can definitely adhere to giving someone a quick way to dive in, I think just by presenting menus as your mobile experience is a very bad idea. I was recently consulting with a client. After clicking through 4 menus, I finally got to a product. It was an e-commerce site. I was like, who the hell is hanging on for this long with what you're doing? Very poor choice in what's there. So Brad Frost, who's a great responsive and mobile designer, has a great blog if you ever want to check that out. But his quote of mobile navigation is like a good friend, there when you need it. It's there when you need to call upon it, not something that's just stuck in your face the entire time. So mobile is your life, right? We understand, we research, we figure out what we're going to do, what we're going to buy, where we need to be. We use it when we're in the store. We price check, we read reviews, we understand all the things going on with that product. It's fully ingrained with it. And now we're getting to the final frontier, right? It's going to be our transaction piece. We just wave our phone in front of whatever and then we buy it. Or if we're lucky, you use Google Glass like Josh and you just say Google or Glass buy, right? It automatically processes your payment of what you're looking at. So when Josh looks at you and says buy, you're bought. So, some of the right pieces. So the things that I wanted to cover today is kind of a lot of the technical makeup on some of the options that are out there for mobile. So this is an easy way to put it, right? You have this beautiful Grand Canyon and you want your mobile solution to be on a level playing ground. And this more than anything for where mobile is at in its youth and the things going on with it and what we know, this is how things really strike me. Is right now you can do far more harm to yourself in some of the structural pieces, the pitfalls, the don'ts, the oopsies, than you can by having what you think to be a killer, amazing mobile strategy. The upside on that might grow to be much farther. Someday this graphic might be reversed, might be in a year from now. But for right now, this is where I see for most of the people we work with where you end up. And that pitfall kind of makes up 3 different things. If I can leave you with one thing today, even though my presentation is a lot about some of the technical configurations, that's just not the end of the solution. You still need the user experience, you still need the content pieces to lay over the top. And it amazes me when a lot of people talk through a number of these things where they really feel like it's such a utility thing in mobile and all of the solution for it is focused on how you have the technical end set up. So here's the 3 approaches that we encompass most with what we work with. So you have responsive web design, dynamic, and parallel. And there's just a couple examples of different sites using these. And there really is a wide variety all around the web that uses them for various reasons. So responsive. The easiest way to think about this, view your web design like Legos. The site understands, the browser is what does all the work, understands what type of size browser, what the width is, and it's going to reconfigure the site to meet that needs with it. So the nice things about it is you build it once and you have just one site to manage. There's a lot of people who you can have a parallel site with an MDOT and you're managing 2 separate pieces of content, which can be hard on an organization. Responsive, what I really like about it is it's not a band-aid. It's not something you do to a website. You don't responsify it and make it work that way. It's something that you start off from the very beginning and you're starting to think, and mobile first is a great thing to think about, but user first. What does that user do when they have a smaller screen and proximity matters to them and some of these other things? Does that change the way I display the content that is supported by the technical setup that I have with my mobile site? So, you know, taxonomy and content matter with it. As with anything, there's good, better, and best approaches to this. The very first time we built a responsive website 2 years ago, it sucked in a number of ways. But you keep working at it, you figure out what those pitfalls are, you go through it, you go through other people's code, you go to seminars, you follow blogs, you figure all those things out. Responsive is still very, very young. It has pitfalls, it has issues, but I really do think if I had to bet my money, that's where I put my money on right now. Google and Bing have both said that it's the approach they favor, right? When they first announced this 2 years ago, everybody said, oh my God, this is the way you have to do it. It's the only way to do it. Not true. They have all kinds of different things out there to help along the sites that aren't responsive. But it's easier for them. They spend less time indexing and crawling. You don't run into duplicate content issues and some of the other technical issues. So they favor it, but it doesn't mean you have to. And lastly, I don't think, and I've only found a couple of people who really tout this, but it's not a ranking factor. A lot of times when you go back and you redesign a site with responsive, hopefully you're doing a lot of other smart things to help it, but causation, correlation, you know the same with that. Responsive is not the ranking factor with it. So just one small example, this is a project we did. Lake Winds is a 2, soon to be 3 location co-op that's here in the Twin Cities. And so just taking a look, one of their interior pages, obviously location page is very important to their company to get foot traffic into their stores. So when you go to it, you'll see you have the top or the main body content, and then you have your sidebar of content. So on the web layout, this gets everything above the fold, everything works just fine for you. Now when you move to a mobile environment, if you put the top and the sidebar, you'd end up with probably not the best experience for the user. You make them work a little bit harder. So if we look on these two layouts, on the left side, yeah, sure, it'd be okay. We still have that information, but you'd have to flick your finger, scroll down to get the phone number, which is probably something you want the most, just as we talked about on a click to call. So by changing the rules, and then instead of just saying for all interior pages, put the body up top, and then fold the sidebar down underneath. Go ahead and you need to make those adaptations to it. So that's just one small example. As you go through things, you need to think through it. And a lot of times when people buy like a responsive template or a responsive WordPress theme, there's rules written into it where it has the same behaviors on every template. But you need to analyze your content and user experience to understand what's going to be good, what's going to help connect that user the best. Dynamic. So dynamic basically consider that your content feed is all there and similar, but what happens is a different set of HTML and CSS ends up controlling what the mobile environment. Lululemon's a very good example. I'm sure you guys are all surprised this is up here, but like this is my go-to for my wife. Like I know the size she wears in all their clothes, and I walk in there and like I'm out of there in like 5 minutes. And it all started because I had a phobia when she told me what she wanted. I was like, oh my God, I gotta go into a yoga store, and I was freaked out. So I pulled up their website on my mobile, and I was like, holy crap, this is a really good mobile experience, and it was really easy. So I use these guys as an example all the time. What's nice about dynamic is it doesn't produce multiple URLs like an MDOT, so you end up with one URL, which is, we all know, is much better for your search efforts. And for a lot of large scales entity, it's easier because it's more of a bolt-on. This is something where you can dynamicify to what's going on. You like all these awesome words I'm making up? You guys should write those down. So it's easier as a bolt-on to do. So a lot of people, if they have a lot invested in what their ERP system is and their web platform and e-com platform and everything else, you can keep that running without changing anything, where responsive is a much more heavy lifting and might require a shift out of the entire culture of the technology that you use. So dynamic really fits that need, and that's why you see a lot of the bigger retailers utilize dynamic. You do have some certain things that I'll touch on later that you want to implement within the code. So in parallel, these are your standalone mobile sites. So this would be your M.dot, Shop.dot, Mobile.dot, anything like that. Again, another bolt-on solution. You know, for a while it really looked like this is what was going to be an emerge because responsive really hadn't taken off, and this was a no-brainer. It was creating a separate environment really tailored to the mobile user that was out there. So everything from layout to the content to the metadata that's there, all could be controlled. And as SEOs, we love that control, right? Oh, if I can rewrite different titles for the mobile, that's what we wanted. Well, guess what? That's really not what's in everything that Google's put out there for us. That's not what's in their plans. They don't want to have to treat two different pieces of content in the same way, even though that they do allow it. You're also able to control load speed, so how fast things load and the performance of that is much tighter. Here I always point out Subway is a really good example. These guys, every time I do a screenshot, and I think I took this one this summer, it doesn't have the location one, but like every time there's like 3,000 more locations. I'm like, who the hell is eating all this Subway everywhere? So, what we finally have heard from the search engines is they're starting more to take a stance, right? 2 years ago was that, yes, we prefer responsive websites. Well, this year at SMX, they came out and said, bad websites end up getting bad rankings. So, here's the one easy, simple example that they give, and you've probably run across this, right? You do a search, you go to that URL that's indexed there, but when you get to it, now it redirects, and instead of to that page you were supposed to go to that's 5 levels deep in the website, the mobile redirect kicks you back to the home page. So Google's starting to look at bad mobile experiences, and that will ding you in the search engine results. They know that that's not going to be a direct connect for their users, so they're looking at figuring out how they sniff out some of these things. This is a very easy, high-level example, but a number of those things exist, especially when you get into bigger and deeper sites, and there's a lot of other redirects that are already sitting out there. You're going to see a lot of that stuff take place and penalize sites. So with having one URL, here's another reason why sometimes parallel becomes tough, is you end up with an M.dot in your site. So even think to your behaviors, right? You might see something on a mobile site and then you go to share it on Twitter, it's an article, whatever else. And if you tweet that out there, you're tweeting out an M.dot link. Well, now you're giving that social love to an M.dot link, even though you're not giving the other. And if the site has canonical issues or the redirect thing's going on, you're splitting the love between those two links, even though it's the same content. So by using responsive, that's where you luck out and you direct everything to one URL. Same with dynamic. What Google does allow, so if you go to their developer's guide, use of the very HTTP header helps them understand we have duplicate content, but it's all related to the same thing. So it helps them sniff those things out. They have a very extensive guide on how to handle dynamic and how to handle M.dot parallel sites as well. So I definitely suggest reading up on that, even if you're not anything within your technical team. It's going to help you ask those questions, because a lot of times those guys and gals won't be privy to that. So let's look at some of the content things. Just as I talked about, I really feel like the what for most sites is nailed, but the why really lacks. So in doing some work with Timberland.com this summer, great utility website. I can go on there and do whatever I want, but the amount of content for everything completely lacks. I don't even know why the heck Timberland's a good brand. They don't even have that content on their separate mobile site that's out there. So I don't know, if I've never been introduced to Timberland before by any of their other media or marketing out there, I don't know if this is a premium brand, what their history is, what they're designing for, any of those types of things. They also lack a lot of different tools. If I'm standing in a store and I'm choosing between a Timberland shoe and a North Face shoe, what am I going to do? Which one am I going to choose? And they don't really lay those things out. So understanding everything's a competition, right? You guys already know that from where you're at. You're competing against whoever your competitors are. What is the good, better, best about your product or your service, and how do you call that out? What really stands out to me, users never run out of questions, they just run out of answers, right? And I get mobile is a tighter space, but you really have to understand they might have different questions based on that context, but don't ever look at anything like, oh, we don't want to put all of this on the mobile site. Put it on there, let somebody dig for it if that's what they want, design it in a good experience so they can get to it, but don't say, you don't deserve that if you're mobile, because we think you're a busy mom running through the airport with keys in your hands and a baby under one arm and you're typing an email at the same time. Don't make that misconception. So one little small pro tip that a lot of people end up lacking on is the internal site search. They don't pay any attention to what mobile users are needing. So if you have Google Analytics, use segmentation within that search to figure out from mobile devices only, what are the keywords they're typing into your internal searches, and then you can figure out some of the intent. And then you can start to analyze your content, like, are we meeting these needs? Are these search based on demand, or are these search because they're frustrated and not finding these items on there? If proximity matters, so when you're getting into your search and the type of content, if proximity matters to your business and foot traffic and people getting to your locale, really start to think about all the different things on where someone might search within location, right? They might be 6 blocks from something and wondering, you know, lately I've used my phone to search restaurants near the Orpheum Theater or the Guthrie or by the Metrodome. Consider landmarks in proximity, so looking at things that might be city, neighborhood, the use of nearby language to specific landmarks. If you're in the business where tourists or conferences or whatever else have specific content to that, you can push that further down the page, but having that representation there is going to help you be found in the organic rankings for mobile. So just even in this example, you know, Seattle Hotel near Pike Place Market, you can see by either what's being scraped or what they're putting in the meta description, you know, they're utilizing those landmarks. Even though those hotels in that area can be by 7, 8 different landmarks on the bay in Seattle, they're able to include that information. So with the mobile experience, understand what works, what people are already using, and help them use that. So the classic thing when we went back to, and the menu just fills the screen on those designs, make use of things we already understand, right? The hamburger menu is now widely accepted. It's on all of our Google products, Facebook, everything else. Understand that you can use those things as easy shortcuts that people understand. So it's always smart to pay attention to the user interfaces that are out there on the most popular apps and websites that people are already using. Chances are you're not at a company, unless you're at a big player, that you're able to push people around and teach them new meanings of navigational tricks or how to maneuver on your phone, swipes and taps and everything else. So definitely play into those things that exist. So on mobile and search, James Svoboda. You want to make sure, number one, so there's 2 different bots. There's Googlebot and then there's Googlebot Mobile. Make sure, especially if you're doing responsive, that you're not blocking your assets in your robot text files, right? Because the CSS is doing a lot of work of all those different elements, so make sure you're not blocking the CSS, JavaScript, and the images. You know, meta titles, if you start to look at it, so on a mobile screen you have anywhere from 50 to 55 characters, right? Not the normal 60 to 65 you can get displayed on the web. So again, now you have to fine tune even more how you're organizing them and how you're putting them together, which is important. Speed and performance issues, I'll give you a quick tool to be able to analyze and look at that. And lastly, it's amazing to me, I wish I would have started keeping track when I started really paying attention to this stuff a couple years ago, but mobile SERPs change like no other. half dozen times a year they're changing up what the interface looks like, what's there, local. Obviously a lot of you are aware of like the carousel results within tablets and all those other pieces, so you really have to pay attention to that. I found it funny that the picture in the far right is also you, James. So. You might want to like tag a few more images on the web. I'm just saying, when that's your number 4 image, you got some work to do. I didn't want you to feel left out that I ripped on Jeff and didn't get to. So in mobile views, well, a great tool to use, so Google has their page speed insights test. So this is a great one that will analyze and take a look at the code that's there. So running in your site, you can do both a mobile and a desktop for it, and kind of establishing where you want to get to. What's even better is it produces a hierarchy of lists for you for high, medium, and low priority. Here's the things that you can look at and change. So even if you do this and then you can be that jerk and go off to the IT department and be like, you suck, here's the list. You at least have the specific things that they can look into, so they can't just say, I don't know how this stuff works. So really great tool that you can use with that, especially in some of your first forays into responsive. This can be extremely helpful for figuring out performance issues. If you want to get into understanding the landscape and all the things that are there, obviously Google Analytics is going to tell you a number of things about the devices, but this is a fun tool, screen sizes. It basically lets you go through and filter by mobile, tablet, and desktop and take a look at all the different sizes and the amount of market share and use that's out there in the popularity. So really cool and easy tool. This you might use more to maybe convince internal members on the things you need to look at locally. And because we're really nice, the search team over at SpiderTrap, Brent Rangan, Nate Knox, and myself today, we wanted to be givers. So we made a mobile and local dashboard for you on Google that just posted to our blog today. So if you want to download a custom dashboard, so we've already segmented mobile traffic out. And just as our blog post states, you know, a lot of people, they stop just at knowing, I called it like your sleep number, right? So everybody knows their data, you know, they're not provided percentage. You also know your mobile traffic percentage, right? Anybody I said talk to, they're like, well, we're 22%. All right, well, what is that 22% doing? We have no idea. So you have an idea. You can figure out what pages they're visiting, where that traffic's coming from, what device, how many of them are hitting goals, are they doing better or not, bounce rates, all of those things. So there's a custom dashboard that we whipped together for you in the kitchen today that you can download and use. So your takeaways tomorrow. If you walk out of here, I would take a look, what are your pitfalls on mobile? If you have something existing, do you have link issues? Is it user experience? Is it content? What is it? And how do you figure it out before your users keep getting frustrated? And then eventually the search engines get frustrated and ding you. Next year, I'd say start looking at how do you build the culture of building for mobile and that user first, right? Build that into the DNA of what you're looking at to build a better solution. And in the beyond, no, I can't tell the future like Jeff Sauer can. But, you know, don't get comfortable with what's there. The results are going to change so much. The devices are going to change. Who knows how Josh's device that he wears on his head is going to display the web, right? Is he going to like tap and it'll beam out a web browser onto the wall, and that's how you're going to use it? Maybe. You just don't know. But keep a very open mind to how fast those things are going to change. Thanks.
Presentation about SEO, so you kind of bear with me. So my topic today is kind of about the mobile SEO, and I want to kind of give a focus more on the SEO and UX edge of it. And so the agenda for my topic, my slide here is talking a little bit more about the current situation of SEO and UX, and then we'll go into the case studies. And then from there, we will talk about how SEO and UX can be, in the ideal world, how they would interact with each other, and then just some closing thoughts. So currently, the situation right now, well, right before I continue start, can we get a raise of hands of like who is in SEO? Almost everybody here. And who's in UX? It's good. It's good that we kind of have a blend of both now. So the current schism of SEO and UX between the difference between these disciplines and their different approaches really focuses on their approach and their surrounding the audience. And so SEO used to, and you know, this I want to really focus on that. SEO they used to really focus just on search engines as their core, the core center of the decision making. And then so when it comes to like actual users, they're more concerned in terms of how they can get all that foot traffic into the website and then from there to maximize revenue. But in terms of SEO or in terms of UX, UX experts tend to focus more on the users as the sole decision maker, or the focus their decision making solely on their the users. And these users have individuals with psychology, personality, and they have the goals that they need to achieve when they get on the website. So in order to connect users to what they're looking for when they get onto the business website, the UX tries to really understand the motivations, the perceptions and feelings that users take with them when they visit the websites. And another difference between the two really boils down to the responsibilities of SEO and UX. SEO is primarily tasked with getting users and visitors to get the websites to the top of search engines, obviously, because when you're on a mobile, you have maybe only like 2 by 5 inches of screen to really get your site to the top. And on top of that, their SEO is also held accountable for getting people through the door, but also to convert them along the sales funnel. In terms of UX, their responsibility, along with design, which I'm not going to focus too much on today, is to charm the users, to kind of help them find where they need to go and what they need to accomplish on the site, and then just turn them into paying customers. And so kind of going off of that, I want to continue to give some of the case studies. And one of our client, Rasmussen College, we did a lot of conversion rate optimization tests with them, and our first case study is revolving around the mobile navigation. And something as simple as just focusing on the navigation really matters in this case, because the core test really focuses on adding a clear path to get to the conversion page, which is the request program information. And by clarifying that call, clear to action, and we're leveraging the mobile's native functions by click to call, we will provide a clear path to the user so that they're more likely to convert. And so from home, on the left picture here, we have just home and contact. And then just by adding request info, more clear descriptive text about what the user should expect when they click on that link, and by adding a call us button to activate the call function on the mobile phone, we got the Rasmussen College got almost a 22% lift in conversions just from that one simple change. And then on mobile case study number 2, we focused on the mobile homepage call to action. In this case, it is an image. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. So the image, so our hypothesis for this test is by offering a very prominent and clear call to action on the homepage, visitors will have a clear path to where they need to go. They have easy access, one click to the request program info page, and thus they're more likely to convert. We did an A/B test on that, so we also use clear, concise language with a contrasting color button from the red against the green. And then we also use relevant imagery and content headlines that were carried over from the website. So when they visit the website during the day, they see the relevant headline, and then when they go back on the mobile, when they're traveling, they also see that same experience, so it carries over consistently. And just this simple change from having a graphic change and adding the red button, that homepage gave roughly an 86% lift, so that was really major. And what we learned from this simple change that we did on the homepage of the mobile site, besides bringing in the relevant and the clear headlines, what really helped here is that we brought in relevant imagery that we carried over from the desktop experience, so they have that seamless experience from desktop to mobile throughout the day. But really that the audio, that the hero with the image now matches the target audience. So the audience, the user now has something that they can relate to. The hero is attractive, is facing forward and looking at the visitor. Most important, she's smiling. So all those are like very key, critical key points that can be taken from UX. And all those are information that we've gathered from our UX and our rich data that if UX doesn't exist, we may not have been able to leverage otherwise. Our case study number 3 is revolving around the desktop and mobile. In this case, we're testing whether or not the relevance is more important than the user experience. So in this case, we were directing visitors from their keyword search on the search engines to the pages that they had searched for, regardless of the platform. And we were hoping that they would get higher conversions from that. However, that wasn't the case. So in this case, in terms of the desktop versus the mobile, we actually had a loss of 30% in conversions. And the key thing that we learned from this is that even though the information sent is wrong from the search keywords, sending them to a desktop site on a mobile phone really just isn't ideal because, again, you have that 2:5 screen size, and the website renders entirely, and then the user has to pinch and zoom, and just to kind of navigate around the page, and so they were less likely to convert because of that first impression of having to navigate around versus something that's more optimized for the device that they're using. So where does this take? My next topic here is really about collaboration. So the focus of my presentation really is about how UX and SEO can really work and collaborate together to bring on the results that the business needs. And in terms of SEO and UX, I noticed that there's more of an emerging partnership between our UX team and Josh's SEO team. Is when we really think about it, UX and SEO, they really have a lot more in common than differences. So even though their roles and responsibilities are different, they can tag team and actually bring more value to the business. And one key thing that they're both similar in is how, in terms of like how they use information and they list all that. So UX has a facets of user experience, and those boils down to findability. And in the SEO terms, that's information sent. How strong is your information when someone's using a search, and are they able to find your keywords so they can find your website? And so once they find something in the search engine and they go to your website, is the content accessible? Depending on the device, so in this case, mobile, is the content on mobile. If your site is developed in Flash, or obviously you're not going to be able to see it on iPhone devices. And is the content desirable? That develops into identity and branding. How are you going to be known out there amongst all your competitors? And is there information usable to on the device? And is the information credible? Like, are you that builds trust? Are you linking to other sites? Are you a reputable brand? And is information useful that relates to relevance in SEO? So and then the next thing is valuable. Is your information valuable to the point where you actually build a loyal customer branch? And so from there, we have a convergence. In an ideal world, we would have a convergence of SEO and UX, which would be helpful to find. In an ideal world, UX and SEO would converge together to meet the business goals. And in finding common ground, I find that good UX is also good for SEO. So some of the examples that I came up with are, using language that your users use, even though some of them may not be grammatically correct. Like, for example, what career is right for me was the keyword that we decided to use on one of the college's web pages, because that's the keyword that users were actually using versus which career is right for me, which is more grammatically correct. And then try to reduce the number of clicks required to get to a given page. We all know that SEO, one click would be better than two or multiple clicks in terms of information sent. And try to use descriptive, human-readable URLs. We all kind of know that from SEO, but it's good for both SEO and UX. And good internal link structure and working links. Obviously, if the link is broken, users are not going to be able to get to where they need to go. And have a logical information structure and have the content on the page have a logical and content hierarchy. So you would have, obviously, you have your headlines on top, and then your H1, H2, followed by your body copy content. And in addition, you want to use clear, concise language in your copywriting, especially in your call to actions. You want to be descriptive there so that the users know what to expect when they click on the link. You want to avoid duplicate content. And so the two last points is to, especially on a mobile device, you want to leverage the native technologies that are available to optimize the user's experience, in addition with the optimized design, which includes like the number dialing, so that people don't have to remember a phone number. I can't remember more than the first 4 or 5 numbers, and I'm trying to do something else. So it's a lot easier if we just put a button that says click to call versus putting a phone number there. And also GPS to provide local personalizations. And the last thing we want to focus on is limit the use of rich media formats, because obviously, Sue had alluded to this earlier, is that mobile users are impatient. They may have constraint to local bandwidth. So using Flash, images as text, and content that are inserted by JavaScript after the page loads are better used in just limited amounts. So in closing thoughts, I want to say that when you combine SEO and UX with conversion rate optimization and testing, you basically get success, and most of the time you will meet the business needs. And sometimes, obviously, we're going to have to learn that some of the tests don't always go as we expect, because they can be certain times when it actually decreases a conversion. But that's really when we should take those learnings and then reapply it and reiterate. So again, it's SEO's job is to bring everyone into the door and try to encourage them to go through the sales funnel. UX accommodates for their needs, kind of make them feel comfortable, like they're at home, helps them find where they need to go, and then influences them to accomplish the test, which is, in our case, to convert. And last but not least, test early and test often. So when you test and you find that when you learn something, so you want to iterate and just continue testing, there's never an end to testing and conversion rates. So my last point is that even though SEO and UX are testing all these things, we really have to remember that the experience of the user is really what will be making their decision. So, thank you.
All right. So this question's for Aaron. Aaron, you said mobile ranking. Your mobile site doesn't really affect ranking factors, I guess. Now, implied within some of those, if you have a bad mobile site that loads slowly, then you have bad page speed or something that actually does impact ranking. So how would you?
Okay, but that's a desktop factor too. If your desktop site loads slowly, you're going to get dinged. I just say the more than not, the desktop factors are what holds true to it. Yes, you need to make sure your mobile site performs those same factors as the desktop. But trying to wiggle out, believe me, I've spent the first couple of years of it trying to find every niche little thing on how mobile can be different and what can be a factor. In the end, most of it ends up even if it is, it's so short term that it really doesn't pan out. So all the same things you're doing for your desktop rankings, I'd say if you pay attention to those, you're gonna flush out just fine in the SERPs. You'll see certain movement between 1 to 3 spots when people have done comparison stuff between desktop and mobile search, and made different theories to why that is. But there isn't anybody so far that said, oh, well, I have a first page ranking on this in desktop and on page 9 when I do that search in mobile. I mean, the differences are so minute when they flip-flop either way. So I would just look at it. If it makes sense as a rank factor on your desktop, it's a mobile factor. You just might have to pay attention to it differently. Yeah, stop recording.
Okay. Yes, Adam.
This question's for Aaron. So the James Bobita swimsuit model photo is trending pretty well on Twitter.
Nice.
Is there a way we can get that picture tweeted later?
Definitely. Follow-up question. That beautiful. I'm going to send a lot of anchor text at it, actually.
Slide number 2 in your presentation.
Yes.
Can we trend that as well?
That's not trending. It already disintegrated after I showed it.
Questions? Go ahead.
I didn't quite understand what you do, Sue, for your user experience group at Deluxe.
What we do?
No, what you particularly do, I didn't quite understand what you were showing that you do.
I'm sorry, I can't.
What is your who do you like, who is your audience? I guess that's what
Who is our audience?
Yeah.
At Deluxe, we have basically small business owners. It's our target audience. It's pretty broad. But because Deluxe has built over 100 years of experience with small businesses through checks, they now are providing multiple services to small businesses.
Like what?
Like web services, email marketing services, promotional services, anyways, basically how to market your business.
Have you seen those work happy commercials? Sometimes.
You know, like a toothbrushing of the elephant and the surfboard guy and
Yeah. So we went through a rebranding, which is Sue is getting at. So now we're that one-stop shop for small businesses. So what Sue does is really not as much for our I should say for the service side, but for the enterprise, really building out our Deluxe properties, the best user experience.
yeah, but I don't know. I don't even know how many sites we have. We have a lot.
James.
Cheers.
My question is a little forward thinking. So say you do a bunch of UX testing today, CRO, SEO, it's all wrapped into one bundle, one experience. How do you predict how that experience is going to change based on the user's expectation of what they're looking for on your site is going to change? So target example, obviously the locations, hours, phone number, but as the web evolves, how are you going to approach testing and implementing changes based on usage?
You're asking me. Well, I mean, a huge part of our job is staying up with trends, right? Probably with you too. We're constantly figuring out what's next, what's gathering traction, the expectations are changing every day. Ages, according to who you are, changes every day. So it's evolving. It's constantly evolving. It never stops.
Any insight into video and mobile? Just experience with it.
I mean, the same things you look at with desktop when you consider phone devices and just about all the video players right now. It's strictly related to search. I mean, it's no news to anybody else. Like anything you create, put it on YouTube and optimize it the same way you'd optimize that video just because it's their property. They have first-hand access to the data. I mean, very often you'll rarely see video come up in the first or second page of results. So even if you use a different player on your site, whether it be native or another service, I would definitely use that. I don't know. My own personal feeling is like everything that Google's learned in however long since Jeff predicted the internet and Matt Cutts would happen, like they're using that evolution all that fast within mobile, right? They've shrunk everything down and they're looking at, and that's why I don't think they're spending time with things like, I thought like mobile metadata would be genius, right? On every page you'd have instead of meta name, you have meta mobile, and then you could give it to mobile, but They just look at that, and I think they're overall like the small gimmicks and shortcuts, and I think they're looking at it big picture. So.
I have a question for Aaron. So Google has the human quality raters, outsourced basically coming in and the human element, making sure this site deserves to rank. Have you heard or do you know if a mobile experience is going to be part of that?
I would absolutely think so. I mean, so I don't know of anything mobile taking place, but when you look into the world of local, so there's already things when we get into, which James's blog notes have with call tracking and those numbers. So I actually know of businesses that have failed call tracking things, even though the number was served dynamically and whatever else, because it was actually being visually authenticated by Google, and they said, no, we saw it, and we saw that number didn't match up, and that's why we're not passing you through verification. So I would only think that that'll start going over mobile. I think they look at the obvious things from, the same thing they look at with a desktop search, right? What's the click-through, and does the user bounce back to the results and those kind of things to look at that. They played around with, they did for a while, they did like mobile icons next to results that were mobile, not in the US, but they did in Europe and Asia, I think. So I think they're really looking at ways to do that. I think like their first stance this spring in saying like mobile experience matters is kind of a heads up and a warning. But I do think they'll figure out filters and ways to understand either through your code or other things first and foremost. Is this a mobile-friendly site? Is this built the right way to deliver that experience? And then they'll start considering user behavior after that. Yeah?
Is any of the research you've been doing looking at apps versus mobile site design for those, e-commerce login type situations where you want to know the customer and interact?
Yeah, so the big question, I guess first most people usually ask me like mobile web or apps. I always tell people mobile web for sure, it's the most ubiquitous and what you have out there. Especially in like the e-commerce space, I look at it like, mobile web is easy as sales channel. Build your app for your VIP customers, right? They're gonna do work of, they have to find your app, download your app, remember to open your app. We all know the stats, right? 30, 40 apps on average on a phone, 5 or 6 actually get used. So they have to really be a brand or a product or service fanatic to utilize that app on that. Anything you can do in between those things, from integrated logins and whatever else, to make that experience easier is better. I think it'll be interesting to see more which way things morph between apps and web to what that experience is. But right now, I mean, your browser is still your most powerful app that you have out there for most businesses.
So is there a quick identity on the mobile device websites?
But see, here's a problem. It's only, how many of you, right, you get a request on LinkedIn on your phone if you haven't signed in through the browser and you go to accept it, and then it kicks you and like, LinkedIn, we have an app. Did you know that? And everything else, like there's a fragmented experience between web and apps right now, and there really isn't anything that's solved to authenticate that. I think that's some of the reasons behind like the fingerprinting in iPhone 5, right? When they start to look at like these apps are yours, and I think there'll be some binding to what the web applications are. I think it'll just take further things from migrating away from even how we see what happens with cookies to like join those experiences. I can hope, because I get tired of the LinkedIn thing all the damn time. Yeah. This ourselves.
What are some tools that you use to measure all of this mobile environment?
In what way?
Like with analytics tools, are they web-based analytics tools good enough for mobile, or are there mobile-specific tools that you recommend?
For us, strictly for mobile web, I mean, we lean on Google Analytics and just configuring all those things and really understanding the web traffic more than anything else. On the app side, it depends what kind of app. There's a number of different things on the app side that we'll use for that. Google Analytics obviously has gotten better with some of the things that they offer for apps, but there's a lot of others that help you as far as much more on performance or bug issues that are there. So that's one that we rely on the most to look at, but a lot of it's just filtering down and segmenting down the traffic as far as you can is the best idea.
So a question about equity passing. So if you've got a responsive design, it's the same site, right? Same URL. So the links that you get and whatever kind of signals you get to that responsive site, to your site should benefit from both a mobile and desktop perspective. If you're using a parallel site, standalone, Mobi or MDOT, whatever, have you seen any sort of degradation in equity even with using Google's code because there's some sort of redirect or meta swap going on there.
We've ran across it with a few sites where, it'll be stuff where like the mobile site has duplicate content issues that they don't even realize because they just bolted on a parallel site or whatever else. So, it's really important to look at like the very HTTP header is the biggest thing. The only time you run into an issue there is some CDN networks don't adapt to it really well. You actually have to go back to wherever that CDN network is to try to get them to help apply and do that. But most it comes down to, canonical, the very HTTP header, almost the same kind of issues you'd have with the desktop site and duplicate issues. You're just introducing that all on your own and knowingly by creating a mobile site. So I haven't seen anything that really gets dinged yet, unless when somebody creates a mobile site and it is parallel or separate, that there's issues there that they're just not looking at all because even their SEOs really aren't paying attention to it through everything.
Like even if you're implementing redirects or canonical tags, theoretically it doesn't pass 100% of the equity. And so I guess that's sort of where I'm drilling down, thinking about different types of mobile sites you want to build. If you wanted to build a mobile site that really let you max search benefit from it, right? Would it make sense based on that a responsive design will get you that because you get the full amount of equity for those URLs from the links and whatever other signals?
I would think so. I haven't pushed that far down on it, but to me it seems like for right now it is the best option in just from your overall approach, eradicating a lot of issues you might run into with the other ones. But the other ones can be easier and lighter on your budget to implement. You just kind of play with whatever your bad choices are.
I don't remember your name, but can I trust you? Yeah, say hey. You said something I think lived it a lot, which is test early and test often. And it seems like that's going to only grow. Can you expound a little bit more on how you set up a workflow on that, how you iterate the results from it, and how you communicate it to clients? I find so often I've got something, and then really to explain it to them, really take all that testing background and come along with it to the decisions. How do you do that?
Sure. So what we did is we kind of developed a methodology in terms of how to develop the test plans. We first initially have a concept we want to test, and that's kind of our hypothesis. So you kind of have to start developing what kind of things do we want to test, and how can we get people to actually convert, or what is the business goal on that page or overall site, like what is working and how can we do that. And then from there, we develop a test plan, and in our test case, we did A/B testing. And so when we show when we get the results and kind of brief the whole team about how that impacts the number of conversions, which translates to actual sales. That by itself already speaks a lot to how the model works. So eventually it's just the actual results that kind of sells itself. So if you can kind of just allow the client to see the results and see how it translates to what revenues they can generate from it, that's by itself is revenue. So it makes the methodology so it's also when you learn from all of that, that's the project. The test is a success. If it's not, I have to go back and analyze why didn't the test work, or like how do we get to this result of the lower conversions that we had in our test case study number 3. And when we analyzed it, we started noticing that obviously the desktop just isn't optimized or very friendly to the mobile users, and so that in that sense we kind of took that learning, and we're going to continue to keep that in mind when we're testing further, so that we don't make the same mistakes again. And we need to come up with a methodology and working in mind instead. We start a rhythm, and we'll work on it. And if it's a success, you present that. And if it's not a success, then you basically just going to start over and keep on the learnings and say that, since this didn't work, let's try something else.
If I
one big brand disaster to show why you need to basically design your website and develop your website with conversion rate optimization as a safety net. You know, when we were working with Rasmussen like a year and a half ago, we did a rebrand, new identity, new logo, new homepage, new all of this, and we were all like, sweet, HTML5 parallaxing homepage. We got this thing on lockdown because that's really, really cool. We tanked our conversion rates on the homepage by 20% in our lead generation. So, and we didn't find out until a couple months later. And so, you know, we learned that lesson, and from that point forward, it was like, okay, we got big important pages, and we have huge, you know, through the most critical areas of the site. Those are no longer available for just regular development. We now have a safety net in place for those key experiences, and if you touch those pages, they're through a test.